Good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Bill Sinkford, the minister in residence here at All Souls this year. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome, everyone, as we gather, some of us here physically in this sanctuary and some of us online. Welcome, everyone, to this diverse, spirit-growing, justice-seeking, beloved community of All Souls. The words of Khalil Gibran. You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. Come now, and let us worship. We light our chalice this morning to kindle the warmth of community. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love. Please join us, Mr. Abel, in a singing of our hymn, Morning is Broken. Please stand and sing with us.
Man, that takes me right back to high school, that song. Welcome to All Souls Church Unitarian. My name is Shari Gilbert, she, her. For almost 200 years, we have created an intentional community where we search for the spiritual together, put our passion for social justice to work, and remind ourselves of our responsibility to and for one another. Our mission here at All Souls is to build what Dr. King called the beloved community. As Unitarian Universalists, we are diverse in so many ways, but united in our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and in the obligation to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. We invite you to join us as we seek to create a diverse, justice-seeking, spirit-growing community that is true to the dream of all souls. Let us acknowledge that we walk upon the traditional territories of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway, the original nations of this land. Please pause to reflect on the peoples who inhabited these fertile lands between two rivers. This is a time in our service when we behold one another, either in person or online. If you're on Zoom, put yourself in gallery view. Scroll through and greet the beautiful faces there. If you're in the sanctuary, feel free to get up, greet one another with an elbow bump or a bow or whatever feels safe to you. Please, let's greet one another and welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's nice to see the balcony starting to repopulate. It's like the room is getting wider. Hello, All Souls. I'm Reverend Louise Green, pronouns she, her. And let me add a warm welcome to you in person and online. As I move through the list of ways to connect, I invite you to ponder how you might be called to participate. There is a new Silver Souls display on Reverend David Eaton that can be viewed upstairs on the second floor in the hallway. A huge thank you for this dedicated work on a new portrait, quilt, and historical panels. Hooray, Silver Souls! You may join virtual coffee hour with me today. Just stay on the Zoom and touch base with a smaller group on the service themes and life in general. After the service, you may also join a discussion in the library, which is through these doors and in the top corner over there, about the proposed new church goals. All voting members receive ballots on April 3rd for this Vote for Our Future on the goals. And a reminder that ballots are due next Sunday, April 17th, Easter. We need All Souls delegates for the annual June General Assembly of the UU Association in Portland, Oregon. If you're registered for GA and you're going in person and you'd like to serve as an in-person delegate, or if you would like to serve as a virtual delegate at low or no cost, please contact Justice Tuya for more info. Justice is in our online church directory for members, and also there is a link in the Friday weekly bulletin. Our monthly Vespers service will be right here on Wednesday, April 13th at 7:30. We dedicate this round to Jose Luis Sanchez and Julia Sales, two members of our Vespers village who died last week. We will be both in person and on Zoom. So see the homepage calendar for the link for the virtual. And then Good Friday service will be offered this week, April 15th at 7:30, in person only for Good Friday here in the sanctuary. This ritual of memory and grief will also include remembrance of the many losses of the last year. We turn now to news on congregational care. There's a new email for pastoral contact or to be included in these Sunday prayers. It's congcare, C-O-N-G, care, at allsouls.ws. One person has already said to me, Cong with a K? No. As in congregation, C-O-N-G-C-A-R-E. So please let us know what you need. We offer prayers for the family of Chad Richards. He was the beloved mailman for 7 years in Dolores Miller's neighborhood. He was killed in a car accident last week and was a key source of friendly connection in her neighborhood all through the pandemic. And I have some good news on Gordon Kent. His burn treatment is going well. He's feeling very motivated for in-hospital rehab. I had a great visit with him Thursday. Visitors are still restricted, but you can send cards to him now at Washington Hospital Center, Unit 13E. 13E with his name and patient. We send love to the family and friends of Calvin Bryant. Calvin's memorial service was yesterday at a funeral home in DC. We offer much gratitude for his life and the many ways he participated at All Souls over decades. And we remember Calvin and his wife, Ann Casey Bryant, as departed elders of this congregation. And then there are 4 celebrations of life coming up at All Souls. All the information is in the weekly bulletins, so I'll just name the dates. The first one is Friday, April 22nd, here for Evangeline Wells. Then there are 3 Saturdays in a row. Celebration of Life, April 30th for Noel Kane, May 7th for Jose Luis Sanchez, and May 14th for Bob Murray. I recognize this is a period of great loss in our congregation with so many at once. So we hold all loved ones currently in the planning process and mourn and grieve with them. Now turning to the many situations in our larger world, and naming just a few, we continue to send good wishes to those of us around the world observing the month of Ramadan. And we also wish those of us who begin the observation of Passover on Friday night in Jewish communities near and far. We mourn with the people of Ukraine as attacks continue and human rights violations mount. We lament the many attacks on trans and non-binary people and painful state legislation, including the 2 restrictive bills passed this week in Alabama. Please take a moment just to name your own situation or person aloud or into the chat. Our meditation today comes from the Reverend Ashley Horan, and in our UU faith tradition, it applies to all people. Let us be clear. Our faith unequivocally, fiercely, and unapologetically affirms that trans people are a divine and a beloved part of the human family. There is no law, no political rhetoric that can diminish the inherent worth and dignity of trans and non-binary people that is endowed from the moment of birth and can never be taken away. And as beloved community at All Souls, may we be clear and unequivocal about what calls us individually and as a congregation. May we fiercely and lovingly proclaim that we are each valued parts of the human family. Let us work together to tangibly create just inclusion, submitting with love to the work which is ours to do. Blessed be, and amen.
Our reading this morning is called Tomorrow's Child by the Brazilian theologian Ruben Alves. What is hope? It is the pre-sentiment that imagination is more real and reality is less real than it looks. It is the hunch that the overwhelming brutality of facts that oppress and repress us is not the last word. It is the suspicion that reality is more complex than the realities want us to believe, that the frontiers of the possible are not determined by the limits of the actual, and in a miraculous and unexplained way, life is opening up new creative events which will open the way to freedom and resurrection. But the two, suffering and hope, must live from one another. Suffering without hope produces resentment and despair, but hope without suffering creates illusions, naivete, and drunkenness. So let us plant dates, even though we who plant them will never eat them. We must live by the love of what we will never see. That is the secret discipline. It is the refusal to let our creative act be dissolved away by our need for immediate sense experience. And it is a struggled commitment to the future of our grandchildren. Such disciplined hope is what has given prophets, revolutionaries, and saints the courage to die for the future they envisaged. They made their own bodies the seed of their highest hope. Here ends our reading. Ramadan Mubarak. Ramadan greetings and a blessed Palm Sunday to you all. This is the season when religious traditions call believers to faithfulness, to practices of obedience and reflection on what love might require of us in this season of rebirth. This season when the earth around us insists that resurrection could in fact be real. The season of Ramadan, when Muslims fast each year in obedience to the requirements of that faith. And Palm Sunday, in the Christian calendar, when Jesus entered Jerusalem knowing that suffering awaited him. It's described in John's Gospel as a triumphal entry, the palm fronds strewn across the path of the donkey that he rode, the people shouting hosannas as he passed. But he knew that betrayal and suffering awaited him. His return to Jerusalem was an act of obedience, an act of submission to a larger hope. Not my will, but thine. Willing submission toward the infinite, as Khalil Gibran phrased it. Ramadan greetings also carry that same tone. The word Mubarak, which we normally just translate as greetings, suggests that Allah will lead you toward the good. Allah will lead you, and the believer is asked to follow. Obedience is required. Obedience. Submission. For many liberal religious folks, like most of us here probably, that starts to feel like a bridge too far. We are very protective of our precious independence, and I know that. The idea of submission to what? To some larger plan? Some wiser will, wiser than our own, Is that really what is required of us? The renewal in the earth is insistent that resurrection can be real, even for winter-weary, COVID-weary souls like us. And we most certainly hope that that rebirth is more than just a metaphor this year. In so many ways, this spring, we want to find a way to believe that the frontiers of the possible just may not be determined by the limits of the life we have known, the life that we knew. That as we regather, we can break out of the habits that held us down, liberate ourselves into a life of abundance and love. We want to believe that life may be opening the way to freedom and to resurrection, to quote again from our reading. We want to believe that. And there are signs. Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed to the Supreme Court this week. Amen. Amen. The first black woman justice, so talented, so well trained, so deeply experienced, so long overdue. It felt almost like the election of the first black president, another Kairos moment, another turning point, possibly. And yet, the old power structures reassert themselves. The political divisiveness seeming even deeper. Almost half of the members of the Senate walked out of the chamber rather than be present to the applause for her. Say that again. More than half of our elected senators refused to applaud a black woman. Outrage, as well as optimism, seem appropriate responses to that confirmation drama. The need for our religious witness, if there was any doubt in your own mind, is far, far from over. And faithfulness will be needed on our part. I have no doubt about that. Discipline of the Spirit will be needed. I feel my own spirit readying itself. Liberation won't come easily. And the suffering is so clearly not over. Could suffering even be part of the plan, part of the bargain? Could that be the way this all needs to work? Hope and suffering must live from one another. That's the message that liberation theologian Ruben Alves offered in our reading. Hope and suffering must live from one another. Now, suffering is clearly a reality of life. That is not news to anyone here. And it seems that we're going to have to deal with needless suffering in Ukraine and here at home. The struggle to resist that oppression and that suffering is going to be with us. Progress is uncertain, it's too often reversed, and it's slow at the very best. I know and you know that that is the truth of the world. But the universalist in me, in most of us perhaps, really begins to squirm. We thought that love was always there for us, right? No suffering required. Isn't that the universalist promise? That we are all of us, already lovable and already loved, all souls? That there's nothing we have to do to deserve it, to earn that love? Can that promise be true and suffering be necessary? How do we hold both the promise of hope and the truth of struggle in our spirits? How do we embrace the renewal and rebirth of this season without denying the hardness and the harshness of life? Last week at First Unitarian in Portland, where I'm finishing my ministry, we hosted the Ruby Bridges Suite. This is a musical telling of the story of the integration of the New Orleans public schools now over 60 years ago. And I know that some of you know that piece well. Some of you, I'll bet, helped perform this piece at the UUA's General Assembly in 2017 and at the Museum of African American History. Yes, are a few of you here who did that? Anyone? I see at least one hand. Amen. Let's give that hand a clap. Darrell Grant, the composer, is a member of the Portland church that I have served, and I had the privilege of offering the narration of that piece last week. Here's the story. The Brown versus Board decision had declared segregated schools illegal, unconstitutional. But the Southern school systems, and later the Northern school systems, had to be forced to make changes. In 1960, a 6-year-old named Ruby Bridges became the first African-American child to attend an all-white elementary school in New Orleans. Angry crowds of parents, almost all women, who came to call themselves the cheerleaders, threw rotten food and shouted threats and insults at her. For 6 months, U.S. Marshals had to escort Ruby to and from her school. You may remember the iconic Norman Rockwell painting of Ruby walking surrounded by the tall marshals. Ruby's words. One morning, my teacher, Mrs. Henry, saw me walking toward the school as usual, surrounded by the marshals. But then I stopped, turned toward the angry, howling crowd, and seemed to be speaking to them. The crowd looked ready to pounce on me while the marshals tried in vain to keep me moving. Finally, I stopped talking and walked on into the school. My teacher, Mrs. Henry, immediately asked me what had happened. Why did I try to talk to such a belligerent crowd? And I told her I wasn't talking to them. I was praying. I was praying for them. I had stopped every morning a few blocks away from the school to pray for the people who hated me, she said. But on this morning, I had forgotten until I was already in the middle of the mob. Please, God, Ruby prayed, try to forgive these people. Because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing. You could forgive them, just like you did those folks a long time ago when they said those terrible things about you. I was praying for them, Ruby said. There is so much to say this morning. First, the hate that Ruby experienced, well, that hate is still with us. The senators who walked out on Justice Jackson were not throwing rotten fruit, but their hateful disrespect was just as real. Resistance to the liberation we seek has not been melting away. And there is therefore no choice but for our resistance to that hate to be clear and to be strong and to be constant. If we believe in the power of love, our voice needs to proclaim it and join the chorus of other voices that reject hate. That much is clear. But our path is not that simple. We need to remember that those school integration efforts themselves, they failed. Public education in the United States is more segregated today than it was in 1970. Now, I'm a believer in outcomes. I think most of us are. We work for outcomes. We want to see progress happen. We want to see it happen now. But I need to tell you that we cannot put our faith in success alone. Because success can be reversed. Look at voting rights. And even success in one area allows the hate to reemerge in others. It's not just critical race theory that is the focus of attacks today, but the worth and dignity of trans and queer folks and immigrants as well. The resistance to liberation, that fear of the beloved community, seems to require groups to hate, groups to hold down so that some few of us can feel held up. Now, perhaps there will come a time when resistance disappears and the promise of freedom and equality will blossom. Theodore Parker wrote that the arc of the moral universe is long. I can see but little ways, but from what I can see, the arc bends toward justice. That arc may finally come around right. It could happen. But I believe that resistance to liberation will be with us and in us, well, for a long time yet to come. And so, in addition to being clear about what vision of the future we want to move toward, we need to find a firm ground to hold us up. We need to imagine a resurrection that is not rebirth into a world without struggle, a world without suffering. We need to imagine a rebirth in ourselves that will allow us to keep the faith, to answer the call of love, and in living into that imagination, to become the change we want to see. Because if the answer is not that resistance melts away, that oppression finally just ends, then the answer has to be found in our response to the violence that still presses down on so many of us, the violence that harms all of us in so many ways. We need to imagine a resurrection in which each act, each instance of liberation on our part, and each act of support for liberation in others, a resurrection into a world which is always in process, a world where needless suffering still exists. Yes, it's going to, but also a world which always offers the hope of turning toward love. It requires, I believe, a different relationship to suffering. Imani Perry has joined the long list of Black authors who have written letters to our children. Her book, Breathe, is a series of letters to her daughters. She writes, I bristle when folks tell me that Black children should know that their history didn't begin with slavery, as though slavery is shameful. Yes, of course, we must teach our children the beauty of African cultures before the violent European conquest. Teach Mali and Akan and Nubia. That is important. But I do not believe, she writes, the acts of oppressors are my people's shame. For me, that my people became, created, and imagined from the position of slavery is a source of deep pride, not shame. What better evidence of human beauty and resilience could there be? What better evidence of human beauty and resilience could there be? I want to say amen to that. And to similar stories about Chinese Americans who found strength living through the Chinese exclusion laws, and Japanese Americans living through the internment camps, and Mexican folks who survived the American occupation of their homeland, and Native folks whose lands were stolen and who suffered cultural genocide, and Irish folks who were called Black Irish for years, and other white folks who have benefited from privilege they did not create, but who have claimed a vision of equity and fairness in which we can all be free. Those commitments, your commitments, Those struggles are a source of our hope. The test is to find and celebrate the strength we have all found, not just the injustice we have faced. And to join together in a large and diverse community of resistance to the hate and the divisiveness. A dream of multicultural and multi-religious community in which the specificity of our lives is honored and all souls are treasured and affirmed. That dream of beloved community can be real if we name it and claim it and join together in resistance to everything that would hold us back from it. It will be in our acts of resistance to the hate, I believe, that our liberation will be forged and that our freedom will be found. It will be in that resistance that our resurrection can become real and our hope can be sustained. As one congregant said in a gathering I was hosting this week about the new church goals, living into those goals, that person said, will mean engaging all souls in service. Engaging all souls in service of the vision of beloved community. Engaging all souls in service of the freedom that can only fully come from answering the call of love. And we see that community of resistance emerging today. It is real. We see it in the Washington Interfaith Network, in the Poor People's Campaign, in the work of the Eighth Principle, in our own faith, and in the ongoing reflection about the history and the future of this proud congregation. The opportunities for lives that answer the call of love, the opportunities are all around us. Plant dates, wrote Ruben Alves. Make of your lives the seeds of your hope. And we may never taste those dates, that's true. The final fruit of our effort may not be ours to enjoy, that is true. But delayed gratification is not my point this morning. Because the joy of the planting, of the community coming together in shared clarity and common hope, that is joy that can be had right now by all of us. The beloved community is not a promise of ease. It is a commitment to hope that can see us through even the difficult days ahead. The beloved community is a call for faithfulness. Faithfulness to a vision that can be real. Faithfulness to a hope that can set us all free. May that be so. Ashe and amen.
Carrie Reichs and Gregory Ford were my inspiration for volunteering as worship associate. I had wanted to do something, but my fear of speaking extemporaneously held me back. One day it dawned on me that I could write about myself at home and read it out loud here. That seemed simple enough. So now you know me. Among other things I've shared, you know that I'm an Air Force brat who moved 27 times. I have 2 trans kids, one IVF and one adopted, and they both came out here at All Souls. I'm in a committed relationship with a Jewish man. I'm divorced. You know I'm a residential property manager, and you know I'm a cisgender woman. Although I talk about different things every time I serve as worship associate, each time I end with similar language. And that's why I give to All Souls. Please give as generously as you can. Ushers will pass the plate, or you can text ASCU to 72356 or open the QR code in the pew in front of you or in the chat box, or mail a check to the address on the screen or in the chat box. In other words, we worship associates ask you to give to All Souls Church Unitarian. It's a soft pedal ask, but we ask you to give money to All Souls to meet the budget created by Executive Director Tracy Trotter Hughes in concert with Senior Minister, Executive Team, Board of Trustees, and voted upon by the full congregation. The 2021-22 budget covers everything from toilet paper, condoms, hand soap, paper towels, to maybe repairing the elevator should it malfunction. In between, the budget covers everything else like ministers and staff salaries, utilities, computers, Post-it notes, and the 200th anniversary celebrations. Where do the actual dollars and cents in the assets column come from? You, me, Zim, she, him, they, them. The process is the budget is set. The 2-month pledge campaign is carried out. Folks make a pledge. Folks fulfill their pledges by making a gift, paying what they pledged or what they can to the church. But as I learned in my Geo Group session this past week, right now, there's a chunk of pledges that have not been fulfilled. Apparently, history shows that folks tend to fulfill their gifts toward the end of the budget year, but looking at the shortfall that's there right now is scary. There's not much, if any, fat to trim from the current budget, and every dollar and cent counts toward paying for the toilet paper, condoms, hand soap, paper towels, ministers and staff salaries, utilities, computers, Post-it notes, and the 200th anniversary celebrations. So, as your worship associate this morning, I ask you to give generously. Please fulfill your pledges by making your gifts today. Consider enrolling in automatic monthly payments so you don't have to think about it again. So again, this morning, ushers will pass the plate. There's a pledge card in the pew in front of you. There's the QR code in the pew in front of you. You can text ASCU to 72356, or you can mail a check to All Souls Church Unitarian in the address on the screen and in the chat box. Let this morning's offering begin. Thank you.
instructs us on the possibility of rebirth. Let us make our own lives, our real lives, and our life together. Let us make our lives the source of our hope. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace, practice love. Amen.
Lord, I will lift mine eyes to the hills, knowing my help is